Yes, it is my birthday, and I don't know if I would want to be anywhere else but here. I would like some new batteries for this for my birthday.
Let me get
Pick you because your name sounds the fastest. Here, all the way to the back there. I'm going to stand here silently until you come back. I have turned 31. It's way past 30, I know. But last year it was a pretty big deal. Turned 30, the odometer clicked over, and this year, nothing. You just don't feel very special at 31. I've got 9 years until a significant birthday comes up. So I'm just going to be meandering until that happens. We have a good amount here, but we have added 50 chairs maybe since you've been here last, and I want you to know that that's because we want more people to feel comfortable coming and sitting with us. At Easter, I think we had like 220 people here, and it was not comfortable. So now we've got enough chairs to accommodate a large number of people. So look around. The empty chairs beside you are probably for somebody that you have in mind. Now, I'm not saying somebody that you like and wants to do, someone who just smells good and you want them to sit next to you, but someone who you think they need this sort of family. They need this sort of Savior. They need this sort of church. And if they could have this sort of family or this sort of church, then it would do wonders for them. You know somebody like that. They're just either dying where they are or floundering where they are. How rude. I was talking. Blaze is never going to do anything for me ever again. All right, there we go. So look around. There's bound to be somebody that you know who needs a church. They don't need religion. They don't need doctrine. They definitely don't need dogma. They just need church. They need people who love them, who take care of them, who will support them, who will support their marriage, who will just support them as human beings and help them follow Jesus. Somebody you know is like that, and they're aching for that. And you know for a fact that if they came, they would stay. See, that's my job. That's our job as church leadership, or as the elders' job. Whenever they come, to structure this in a way where they don't want to leave. And I'll promise not to embarrass you too much. You may have to kind of warn them about me. But they won't want to leave, I promise. So bring them, sit them in the seat, let them join this church. And if you think, man, they're going to need a little extra convincing, bring them on potluck, sit them in the seat, and then go eat with them. And let us get to know them, and let us enjoy their company. Now, we are on the second to the last of the Beatitudes. Next week, we will have a very special announcement, a special presentation, and they won't have anything to do with the Beatitudes, but you do not want to miss this. Those of you who have kids, especially like junior high kids, late elementary kids, you need to be here to hear this. I'm not going to tell you what it is today, because I don't know. We're going to come up with something between now and then that will entice you. So a special announcement next week, and then the week after that we'll finish the series on the Beatitudes. So this particular Beatitude is for me, I believe, the hardest. Because it's not necessarily an attitude. It's something that we're called to do. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now what do God's children look like? If you talk to people in the world and you said, what do the people of God, the children of God, tell me about them? What's your experience with them? What do you think they would say? What do you think they would say around here? What are the children of God like? What are they supposed to look like? Jesus says the children of God, those who will be called the children of God, are the ones who can also be called peacemakers. Now this is not just something where you get to lay back and relax and say, well, I don't want to get into conflict. Peacemaking is not avoiding conflict. Peacemaking is not avoiding conflict. It's entering into conflict with the objective of peace. Now, often we have two choices. Either we enter into conflict with the objection of getting our way or winning the argument. Yeah, there will be peace if everyone just agrees with me. We did this a while back. Churches sometimes will say, we need to be unified. We need to have unity. Well, how are we going to have unity? Well, if we all are of one mind. All right, well, whose mind is going to be the standard? My mind. Well, that's not unity. That's uniformity. And there's a big difference. So we go into discussions and arguments or conflict and we say, well, unless I can come out of here with what I want from this, then I'm just not going to go in. So if we think we can enter into the conflict with some and come out winning, then we'll enter in. But if we don't think we can win, well, let's just not mess with it. Neither of those options is peacemaking. Neither one. You cannot make peace by getting your way or avoiding conflict. It just doesn't happen. Now, a lot of times we would like for peace to be like the hippie peace, you know? Just peace. And then we're done. Oh, there we go, peace. People marching and say, well, we need peace. Oh, I didn't think of that. How do you obtain peace? Well, it comes from being selfless. I have got to be willing to have the difficult conversations with people, to be honest with people, so that there can be peace between us. You ever heard the term going postal? Right? A term that really surfaced around the late 80s, early 90s, I believe, when there was a string of post office incidences in which a postal employee would come to work and shoot everybody, which is not the job description of a postal employee. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. So they'd come and then just take out a couple of people, and people said, wow, he's going postal. Now, why were these guys, it was odd, just in post offices, it happened 4 or 5, just real quick within a span of about a year and a half. Just these post office shootings. Well, people started explaining that the working conditions in the post office were just so horrendous that people were coming in and shooting their co-workers. And they said that with a straight face. How do you make that jump? Like every once in a while, the working conditions were awful, so they shot everybody. How did you get from one to the next? Like, it's not just, oh yeah, it was pretty rough. The donut was stale, so I shot everybody. Like what? Of course you. what was happening was, it wasn't just that the working conditions were so bad. They were experiencing the bad working conditions, hating the bad working conditions, going home and dwelling on the bad working conditions, going and buying a gun while thinking about the bad working conditions, and then going and doing something illegal while thinking about it. See, they weren't just expressing it. And this happens a lot in our marriages. Not the shootings as much, but where you think something, and instead of saying, well, this, you say, well, I think this. It seems to me that this is happening. And entering into a healthy conflict, instead you hold it to yourself and you say, well, I'm just gonna leave it alone. And you hold it. And you let it sit. And it's like it grows and it has its own personality now. And now you're remembering the incident a lot worse than it actually was, and you're actually seeing that person, your spouse, the person you're supposed to love the most, through a lens of this one thing. And then you start saying things as ridiculous, can I say dumb? As dumb as they always, and then just fill in the blank. Anytime you say they always or they never, and then finish the rest of the sentence, you are always wrong. Never right. No one always does anything. No one never doesn't do anything. I just lost consciousness for a second. That sentence was tough. My tongue was like, you're killing me, Swans. So, there's a... So we'll take this one incident or two or three incidences, and then we'll dwell on them, and we won't talk about them, and we'll let them grow, and then we'll start seeing our marriage and our work relationships or our parents through this. They never let me do anything. Nice shirt. They let you buy that shirt. They clothe you. They feed you. Like in the end, never, it's just it's a wrong word. Always a wrong word. We start filtering our relationships through a lack of peace. Then we don't bicker, but we're bitter. We're resentful. He always says that. She never does this. Wrong and wrong. Every time. And it's not just the language that is wrong. It's the attitude of taking an instant, instead of going and reconciling to that person, putting it in you, and making decisions through that bitterness, or dare I say hatred. Your kids, your parents, your wife, your mother, your boss, your employees, never always, they never. And when we start thinking in those terms, we can be sure that we've housed some deeper problems, and it's coming out as petty bickering. We didn't choose to make peace in the first place. We chose to just say, well, I can handle this and I'll stuff it down. Put it in me. Let it grow. That's why you see people at McDonald's throwing a fit. Really, in the end, McDonald's can do nothing to damage you all that much. I've never walked in and said, I would like a cheeseburger, and then with no onions, and then they put onions on it and then punched me in the face. Right? I mean, it's never gotten that far, right? But we act as if they did. There's onions on this thing. they just stayed off. When I was working at McDonald's, I once had a woman come up just furious, just so mad. And she goes, there is a fly. And not, when you're so mad your teeth don't even open, they just, there's a fly in my drink. And I said, that's gross. She said, well, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I'll get you a new drink. I said, oh, do you think I put that there? It's just a fly. So we get, but this woman's not mad just about a fly. She's mad about everything else in her life. Everything else that's going on that's unresolved, it's piling up upon piling up upon piling. And by the end, you're just shouting at the people you love the most. Why would you do that to them? You love them the most. See, Jesus says it's not just about not entering into conflict. Actually, Jesus calls us to some serious conflicts. Later on, in this particular sermon, he starts off the sermon with the Beatitudes, and then just in this chapter, a couple of times, he says some things about conflict, about peace, about resolving conflict that are really hard. Therefore, in verse 23, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and reconcile to them, then come and offer your gift. Do you know what's more important than worship? Your relationships. And now a lot of times we switch this and we make this verse a little easier than it should be. It's not this easy. Sometimes we say, if you got something against somebody, if you're mad at somebody about something, then you go and you reconcile that before you need to take care of that right now. That's not what this verse says. This verse implies that should be true. But this verse says, if you know of somebody who has something against you, if someone is frustrated with you, drop your sacrifice and go make peace. That's much harder, right? Someone's frustrated with me, I can easily say, well, move on. But Jesus says, if someone has something against you, don't offer sacrifices, don't worship, go take care of it. Reconcile to that person, and then come worship. That's how it should happen. So for the next 2 minutes, we're going to walk around and air grievances to them. I'm just kidding. But really, there may be someone in this room, in this church, that you are just wrestling with. You just flat out don't like them. Why? Well, because they are. No, not because they are. What is it in you? How can you change to affect the relationship? Because you can't change them. And if a lot of you are sitting out here thinking, well, I know some people who should really be making peace. Well, then you are effectively not making peace. This is one of those sermons that is as soon as you take it and apply it to anyone else, you are losing the battle. God calls us to make peace. We are the peacemakers. We are not the receivers of peace. You got somebody you got something against? Go fix it. You got somebody who's got something against you? Go fix it. Notice in both situations, the onus is on you, because who's the only person you can control? You. So make peace. If you're offering a sacrifice and you remember somebody's got something against you, drop it. Go take care of it. Well, this has been going on for years. You don't understand how awkward that would be. I understand how awkward this would be. I've made a commitment, and I've honored this commitment my whole life and my whole ministry, but I try to be as honest and open with people as possible. That might mean I step on your toes in a real conversation. That is going to mean whenever you say, I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm probably going to interrupt you and tell you not to say it. But you should trust your instincts. But I don't think I'm a good human being, a good Christian, if I think something that could help you or think something that could guide you as a pastor or a minister. Did I just say pastor? All right. As a minister, and there's man, I'm going to get letters. But if I think something and I don't say it, what kind of human being am I? What kind of love is that if I'm not honest with you? And that has landed me in some really awkward conversations. I once had an elder, not here, not my last church, but you can count backward, he just ramrodded me, just lit into me, thought my intentions were different than what they were, and I was like, my intentions weren't what you think they are. He said, oh, okay, well, if you'd like to study about that, then I'd love to study with you. And I said, well, I'm not going to because I don't like you very much. Well, that's right. I mean, the relationship needed to mend before we sit down and study the Bible. If I don't like the guy, I'm not going to study. And I wanted to let him know. I didn't want that to be some hidden thing between me and him. I don't like him. So I'm going to tell him that. But that's why I'm not, because I don't want to study the subject. I'll study it with someone else. I just didn't like him at the time. And our relationship grew a little bit. But sometimes you just have personality clashes, and to be open with these personality clashes is sometimes the first step in resolving. Listen, our personalities don't mix. You think you're right, I think I'm right. That's not a personality clash, but it seemed to be at the time. Making peace is so hard. I just want to get that across. It's not something you sit in your easy chair and do. It's something you pick up the telephone and do. It's dialing that number. People still dial numbers. It's the difficult things. Look what he says later. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Why would he tell us to get hit again? And I've heard this softened. People say, well, he's sort of using hyperbole. If you get punched, you stand your ground because you're a man. My goal in life is not to be a man. My goal in life is to be Christ-like. And when he got punched, did he fight back? When he got whooped, did he fight back? When they took from him who was rightfully his, did he fight back? When they took his life, did he willingly give it? For the sake of something bigger than himself, making peace is not easy. I've been punched once in my life. Just once. So I'm not saying I got a handle on this. I don't have a punchable face. The Germans actually have a word for a face that needs a good punch. I don't know it off the top of my head, but they actually have a word that's defined as a face that needs a good punch. I apparently don't have one of those faces. You may disagree. But then, I've been punched once in my life. I've never gotten in a fight, so I'm not like I've won this battle. But when someone takes something from you, when someone cheats you or wrongs you, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. Jesus says, they've done the same to me. When someone has something against you or something out to get you, You should not run from the conflict. Notice he didn't say, if someone punches you, or slaps your cheek, run. That would be my example. He says, just give them the other one. That's so strange. If people would look at us and say they love people so much that they're absolutely dedicated to giving up of themselves for the sake of love, for the sake of peace. That's hard to do. You know what it's really hard to do? Is when you and that person you used to be friends with have gotten to the point where you hate each other. And you just need to talk. And you won't talk to each other because, well, he hasn't called me. She doesn't say hi to me anymore. Have you said hi to him? Have you called her? That's when it gets hard. It's when the conversation is just going to be a little bit awkward. It's going to be difficult. But it's worth it to make peace in your life. You don't need relationships like this that are festering with bitterness and rage. Notice what he says after this. He says you need an eye for an eye. He says, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children. Notice here he talks about being children of God. If you pray, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. If you seek peace in your life, you will be children of God. You know what this means? I'm a lot like my dad. There's probably a lot of you men are a lot like your dad. A lot of you women sometimes look in the mirror and say, oh, there's my mom. Rachel's mom is here, so I mean, it's always a good thing when you say that. It's always a good thing. Now, if I looked in the mirror and said, oh, there's my mom, that would be strange. But for some of you, I mean, I see my parents coming out of me. I see who I was raised by showing up. When you're children of God, it doesn't just mean He owns you, it means He raises you. It means He changes you. And that if you're a peacemaker, you are a child of God. People look at you and they say, that's what God is like. Look what he says about God. That you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. This has always been talked about how, well, see, the sun is the good. He sends good things on good people and bad people, and He sends bad things. Because we think of rain, and we think of Charlie Brown, and we think of the cloud just following him around. But they live in an agricultural society. Rain is never bad in an agricultural society. So he's saying He sends sun, the things that give life to the ground, on the righteous and the unrighteous, the people who deserve it, the people who don't deserve it, and He sends rain. Another thing that gives life to the ground, to the righteous and the unrighteous. He sends His good and His good to the righteous and the unrighteous. God loves everyone equally. Blesses everyone straight across the board. Now you can decide to be His child, but when you decide to be His child, you are going to have to start living the same way, loving everyone equally. Because our God sends sun, which is good, and rain, which is good, on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? Matthew says, hey, And if you greet only your own, Matthew's a tax collector, sorry. And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that. Be perfect or complete or holy. This word is real loaded. Therefore, as your heavenly Father, perfect or complete or whole. See, when God calls us to be peacemakers and then says, if you are peacemakers, then you will be children of me, what he's saying is be peacemakers like God is peacemakers. Because what is Jesus if he's not God's attempt to make peace with his people? He's made peace with you. You have been redeemed. He's made peace with you. And when you refuse to make peace with the people around you, even if it's awkward conversations or having to have that conflict with the point being peace, not the point being I'm going to get my way. Have those conflicts with the point being peace. When we refuse to do that, it's like saying, God, I know you sent your Son. I know you sent your Son to bring peace between me and you, but man, it's going to be a real awkward phone call for me to make peace with my sister or my brother. Don't be that kind of coward. If Jesus could leave his throne and die on a cross and be dead to make peace with you, don't be that kind of coward. You'll take his gift and did not live it out. Good news is, he has redeemed you. He has set you free. He does love you unconditionally. He has made peace with you. You are his children. The challenge is live it out. Live it out. What phone call do you need to make this week? What conversation do you have to have this week where you can look like a fearless child of God who is heaven bent on peace? Not lazy, disconnected peace, but the difficult kind. The kind where you got to talk. Or even worse, the kind where you've got to listen. And this is real hard for us. It's been said that men don't listen. We just wait our turns to talk. Maybe we got to listen a little bit. Women, you too. If I didn't catch everybody with man and woman, I'm pretty sure. Seek the peace that God has given you. Seek it with him. If you haven't connected with Jesus, if you haven't set yourself at peace with him, if you need to repent of something, you need to commit your life to Jesus. Make peace with God. If you've made peace with God and you have failed to make peace with your fellow man, your fellow brothers and sisters, that's going to have to change. Don't claim to be God's. Don't claim his gifts if you're not going to share them. Sometimes tough to get up and walk down, and sit down here and talk to me or talk to an elder, and ask for prayers, and that's not what you feel like doing this morning, then I understand that. I've gone to church my whole life, never once went down front. You know why? It's because I'm weak. The hardest thing is when you walk out the doors, or maybe before you walk out those doors there, finding that person you need to find and talk to. You're not hair walking out those doors, and then this week committing yourself to doing it. I would suggest Monday, right? You wait till Friday, you're not going to do it. Walk out those doors and seek not your own way and not a retreat from conflict, but to be peacemakers, actively making peace, even when it's difficult. If you need prayers for that journey, or if you want to make peace with God, whatever you need.